Hello, it's Friday, May 9th, 2025. I'm Jeff Nodell, and this is our third conversation with the leadership of OPALCO. With me is Vince Dauciunas, who's president of the board. Hello, Vince.
Good morning, Jeff.
And Foster Hildreth, general manager of OPALCO. Thanks for joining us
Good morning,
today. Jeff. Good morning. And we're going to talk more about renewable energy. I stumbled across a few weeks ago on the internet a new study from Yale University that was really interesting to me on the subject of renewable energy and renewable energy on public lands. It turns out that 77% of Americans support the idea of renewable energy on public lands, except here it's even higher. It's 82% support renewable energy on public lands. So we're talking, I guess, mostly in this case about county-owned land, San Juan County-owned land. And they had a very interesting conversation last time about the scale of renewable projects that you see the need for in the future. And so I think where we left off was that you were in conversations with the San Juan County government trying to create a path so that this could be done. Who wants to start? Where do we stand with the county?
Well, I know I could take a run at that. I would like to provide a little bit of context, if I may. We know that the Bonneville Power Administration, that's where we get our power from, Jeff, is not going to be building any more hydro, right? We get the majority of our power from hydro, overwhelmingly, as a matter of fact. And we know that they're not going to be building anymore. So any load growth that we're going to be experiencing, and we're expected to experience some tremendous load growth over the next 10 so years, has to be thought through differently. I mean, if we're going to make sure that we provide electricity that's reliable in San Juan County, we're going to have to build it. And that's kind of what you're touching upon is, there's a lot of support for renewable energy, but how do we actually get it built here? And what we run into all the time is NIMBYism. That stands for not in my backyard. A lot of support, like you just said, except for the individual impacts of that surrounding neighborhood where we would propose something. We get some pushback from, and it's rightly so. I mean, it's going to be an impact to a particular area, and I think that's what we're struggling with the most. You asked the question is, what is the county doing? I think they're struggling with it. Because in principle, we love it. And in practice, it's hard to implement. Anything you want to add to that, Vince?
Yeah, I'd say it's a good succinct summary of it all. The way this is playing out is that the county is currently developing its comprehensive plan. This is required by the state of Washington. And it was enabled by the Growth Management Act back in the 1990s or so. And in theory, the comprehensive plan is supposed to be a 20-year forward look, and it's a guideline. It's supposed to provide the values and the priorities that the county is facing. And so when it comes time to determine its budget and develop its laws, which are the Uniform Development Code, it's supposed to be the guide star by which this comes about. Now, we occupy the utility element, and it's number 8 that's in this document. And we have been doing a lot of interaction with the county on this because we want to develop some renewable energy storage and generation because of all the reasons we've articulated before. We need to have it for reliability and to keep prices under control. The second draft of the comprehensive element is now out for public review, and we've been taking a big study of it. And the problem is there's the 11 elements in it, there's 543 goals and policies. And there's not really a hint of prioritization among that. So we did a little exercise, which says if a citizen were to take this document, which now runs at 473 pages, and read through all of this stuff, what opinion would they come away with? What would they say? What is the county telling me is the most important thing? And the top 5 things that pop out is the number 1 is to preserve rural character and scenic beauty. Number 2 is to protect the natural environment. Number 3 was encourage affordable housing, but with limits. Adapt to climate change if it doesn't upset number 1 and 2, and keep tourism and local economy compatible. So this leans very heavily towards trying to turn back the clock or to keep things the way they are. And when you get down to it, well, how about, do we have enough power? Do we have enough water? Do we have the ability to provide enough housing for the mandated population growth? And it's really buried in there. So we're trying to work with the county to kind of look at the Maslow's triangle, which is power and water. Are we treating these in an adequate way to make sure we've got sufficient resources to provide for the basic needs, the health and safety of our population going forward? And that's our challenge right now, because as of now, that current second draft is really unprioritized in that respect. It's not really saying one thing is more important than the other. It's just got 543 you shoulds. And the language is what I call squishy verbs. There are things like consider, think about, develop, support. And there's not verbs like do, complete, measure, or make things happen. And somewhere that plan has to get translated into the budgets that they spend money on and the rules that we operate under, which is the Uniform Development Code. And that's part of our challenge right now. I think we've got their ear, but we've got to carry the ball across the goal line yet.
Foster, can you address the cost, the price that will be paid if this opportunity is not met at this time?
Quite frankly, it's rolling blackouts. I mean, we're at a crossroads is the way I look at it. We either can embrace renewable generation locally and understand that there's going to be trade-offs that go along with that, but we're an essential facility. We're essential in providing electricity, which communications, which is emergency services. I mean, everything relies on electricity to function. And if we don't have the adequate power estimated for our load growth, which is really real, we're estimating that our load growth is going to be around 30% even without electrification of ferries, just population growth and what we're experiencing locally or backed up by, supported by those numbers. Or if you get ferries in, it's like 50% in the next, by 2035, the next 10 years or so. So what we're really concerned with is if we do nothing, and I think historically we've always done nothing. I think the comp plan has been very successful of saying, hey, we want to keep the rural character in our area pristine. And we agree with that. We really do. But for the first time in our history, we have to do something. And what I mean by that is we have to embrace local renewables and site it somewhere locally. There's an estimation. We have this on our website if you want to look at the sources. But we know that it's estimated that 1/3 of species will become extinct in the next 50 years by doing nothing. That means we got to get carbon out of our air and emission standards and so forth. And if we don't figure out how to embrace renewable generation locally, we're going to be worse off than we are today. And I think the issue is, and I don't know if the members really understand it. Or do you get the fact that either we got to embrace renewables or rolling blackouts are going to result? And I think that's the disconnect that I know I stay awake up at night trying to figure out how to communicate that well with to our membership.
Speaking of the membership and the public and the citizens of the San Juans, how well do you think the public understands where we're at right now? How well do you think the public understands this critical crossroads that we're at in terms of the potential of rolling blackouts? It doesn't seem like there's very high awareness.
I agree with that statement, Jeff, and I think that we need to do a better job at OPALCO communicating that. And one of our strategies is to educate over the summer when we have the majority of people that are actually located, that are actually here for the summertime. And then what I want to do is I want to poll our membership and do a survey and really get a gauge on whether they understand it. Because like you said, most people, and even the people that are not in my backyarders that don't want it locally, are going to support renewable generation. They just don't want to see it in their sphere of influence, if you will. And that if everyone has that same attitude away from being a co-op and trying to figure it out all together, I think that's the danger that we're going to be having, because that's what we're experiencing. We've experienced it on Baylor Hill. We're experiencing a little bit more on tidal generation when we looked into a tidal project that we had that last discussion on. And now we're looking at we're looking at expanding some solar over on Decatur Island where we have our first microgrid. And again, we're getting a little bit of pushback on citing it. And I think it's more of an educational process that we're deficient at, if anything, than not.
Now, these projects, they have long glide paths, right? I mean, from assuming even that you're permitted, the planning, the engineering, the creation, bringing it on the grid, all that stuff takes a long time. So if people are inclined to just wait till it's a problem, it's going to take a long time to solve it. No matter when you do it, it's going to take a long time to solve, right? But it's now you're really going to be behind the eight ball, because now it'll be clear that we should have built renewable. Now we're going to build renewable, but we've lost all the time to do it. Is that fair?
You bet. I mean, anytime it takes, it takes years to build a renewable generation project, and it takes a long time to permit. One thing that you raised up that I just started thinking about was making sure that people are aware that, we're the community. I mean, we're owned by the membership. We care deeply about the environmental aspects of our community. And every time we go to build one of these projects, it requires a building permit. And we go through all the regimented processes that's required. We go through, wetland studies and site clearing studies, and you name it for a building permit. We go through those SEPA guidelines, if you will. So we have a lot of due diligence to cover. We do a lot of reporting, and we make sure that we safeguard our environment. And I think there could be a little bit of misconception there, Jeff, of whether or not we're going to be really safeguarding the environment. And I think once they hear the process that we go through, no matter the site, that they're going to get a level of confidence that OPALCO is really going to protect our environment like we've done, since 1937.
So I have heard some talk on San Juan Island, primarily among opponents of some of the renewable projects that have been proposed so far by OPALCO, that there's a silver bullet, and the silver bullet is called an SMR, small modular reactor. Now, I don't think any of those have been built in America yet, have they? It's a theoretical. I don't know. SMRs.
There's actually one under construction right now, and I think it's might be South Carolina at that matter. There's a number of entities in Washington State that are looking at that. One is attempting to get permitting for one on the Hanford site right now.
Is an SMR consistent with local values, and is it practical? Is it maybe part of the answer?
Well, you need to understand what small actually means in this context. They typically, the definition that the industry is using is these are devices based upon fission processes using uranium, and they're generally considered to be under 300 megawatts, which is massive. And small is not small physically. You've probably seen portraits of these things where it's in a shipping container on the back of a truck, and it's not really the case. They're typically going to be like 1.5 acres. They're 50, 60 feet tall. There's a containment vessel. So it's just like a larger one that's just been shrunk down. And the thing that people are touting on this thing is that, one, they're going to be smaller. You can put several of them together to get more power. You just put 3 of these together to get a gigawatt or so. And generally the processes that they're using are far, far safer. So you can't say that there's not going to be an accident. It's not going to be zero chance, but it's orders of magnitude less than the current generations of these things. And it has to do with the way that if there's a loss of cooling incident, these things are either air cooled or the reaction basically stops itself. So they're saying they're safer. Now, is that something for San Juan County? I doubt that very much. I think that that's not the case. It's going to be a mainland thing. I think you see if there's going to be one in Washington State, it's probably going to be out on the Hanford site.
Now, let me make sure I paint this picture too, Jeff. We're fed by 2 submarine cables that go from the mainland. They do is they run through Decatur over onto Lopez, and the cables are kind of old. There's one of them that's 41 years old. The other one's like 25 years old, and the 25-year-old cable is actually at capacity or approaching capacity. And we're having conversations right now with Bonneville Power Administration about how do we get a replacement cable, and until we do, putting more energy or trying to supplement it with off-island energy is going to be a challenge. I mean, the cable that we're talking about that we put in between Lopez and San Juan back in 2017 that OPALCO did was a $15 million cable. Now, just think about how much the costs are going to be for a cable that runs to the mainland. right? So in order for us to get more and more capacity for our load growth from the mainland, we got that hurdle as well as another submarine cable is going to be required in short order, and that's going to be, I throw estimates out there, between 100 and 125 million dollars for those cables. That's why it's really important for us to figure out locally how we're going to weather this storm, if you will. If we build it locally, then we get to use it locally. Electrons are going to follow the load, and it's going to be essential for us to go forward with. And battery storage is the other thing Vince touched upon.
And to put the 125 million in context, that's about equal to the OPALCO balance sheet. Is that true?
Yeah, it really is. And it's, that's another topic of discussion. Maybe we need to have it a later day, but we're kind of the jewel of Washington State. And I hope we get some additional support from Washington State to put those cables in, because our little co-op, that's daunting. Those are daunting numbers for us to go forward with. We tried to submit a grant proposal, and we actually submitted 2 or 3 of them, but got denied on the high cost, and the amount of people that it was providing service to was not something that DOE was willing to fund, which was really disheartening for us.
So back to NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Do you think some of this is just not really understanding renewables? I mean, people have seen pictures of the Decatur project, and they see sketches and things like that. I guess I'm wondering, is there a point in the future where maybe people love solar microgrids? They're proud to have them. They're excited to have them. Not that long ago, people thought electric cars were bizarre and annoying and ridiculous, and values change over time. Is there a way to get people to be more familiar and more accepting? And I don't know, can you imagine in the future where people are proud to have a microgrid in their neighborhood?
Boy, I can. I know, we do on the leadership group at OPALCO. We look forward to having one of those things. We feel more safe and secure when they're there. The problem that we're running into is that the NIMBYism is actually making its way into the language of the comp plan that Vince just referenced. And that's the danger. That comp plan language is a guiding force that we're going to have to deal with for 20-ish years. And if it really, what's going on right now is there are provisions in the comp plan that you couldn't build renewable generation without being challenged, that you're going to get to be challenged on all fronts from the NIMBYs. On all fronts. So if that document actually materializes as restrictive as it is, now let me give you an example. I mean, right now the example that I say is there's environmental group that say, hey, we need to use a misnomer is we need to be more energy efficient. So we need to cross that off the list before we do any local renewable generation. By the way, we've been doing a tremendous amount of energy efficiency, and we've been relying on that to cut our load growth and our electricity use. So we haven't had to run into this problem earlier, and we've done a great job. The next thing is you need to make sure that you put solar on everyone's roof. Again, we've been doing a great program. There's over $9 million worth of OPALCO investment in member rooftop. And again, that's a component that we've been relying on not to exceed our allotment, if you will, or have to offset more generation than we need. So it's been working in the past, but now we're seeing the trajectory of energy usage going so much higher that we have to do more. And those provisions in the comp plan are, you got to go energy efficiency, then you got to cross off all the rooftop, then you got to safeguard your agricultural land, which we all agree to, and then you go, oh well, we don't want to remove trees, but that would be ag land, so we don't want to really mess around with the ag land, but we don't want to remove trees, and those are in conflict. And there's so many different offsetting constraints that we're an over-constrained process, and the ultimate result is no, you can't build anything anywhere. Vince, you want to add to that? I know that's one of your research.
Yeah, I'd say, Foster, you touched it completely accurately. I've gone through it, and like I said, there's the 11 elements in there, and we've done a study looking at what is the inconsistencies among these things. So you go into the utility element, and there's 3 or 4 policies or goals that say encourage renewable energy, encourage energy independence for the islands, and so on and so forth. So those are fine and good. But then you go into the agricultural elements of the land use, and there's all these don't do this, don't do that. And you go into the land use in general, it's don't do this, don't do that. And the phrase preserve rural character occurs so in the current comp plan over 300 times everywhere in these things. So it becomes basically a blanket veto to stop anything. And unless there's changes in the UDCs, then somebody that wants to protest against it or raise a concern like this is, well, that violates the comprehensive plan's mandate to preserve rural character. So we're going to be fighting that every single time we do something, unless we can get the county to designate renewable energy generation and storage as what's called an essential public facility. And the state definition of that is basically it is a facility that is essential for the public's health and safety, and it is difficult to cite. And by every stretch of the imagination, generating energy meets those goals. But for whatever reason, it has been explicitly removed from the utility element over and over again. We've been trying to put that in there for the last 6 months or so, and it gets reworded. It gets closer and closer to the point where the current language says, while the utilities provide essential public services, they are not an essential public facility. And, we're trying to get to the bottom of, well, why is that? What is the great resistance to it? And the reason is because what Washington State says is that you cannot use land use and zoning to make citing of an essential public facility impossible. And that's our codes now basically provide that. And this is this tension between trying to preserve the rural character and making sure we've got sufficient power and water adequacy going forward.
So a clash of values, it sounds like a clash of values in trying to create this document. It occurs to me that we'll look in the future, we'll look back to the spring and summer, the year of 2025, sounds like. And that will be the time when the county made the right choices or didn't make the right choices in making all this possible. You don't want to blow this. You want to get this right. You want to make this possible, right? And it's these planning periods have a way of getting a lot of it, and then they get put on a shelf, and they're there for a long time. And it sounds like there's a danger this time of getting this one wrong, and that's gonna cascade through life in the San Juans for years and years and years.
Can I?
So
I want to add some more color if I can on that, Jeff. It's really important what Vince just said. So there's a comp plan, and there's a utility element, and you would think the utility, us, Orcas Power and Light, are going to be like, we're going to go through that utility element. We're going to make sure that it describes our situation and what the problems that we are facing if we don't embrace renewable generation now. And what we see is something in there that says OPALCO has all the facilities they need, and we don't. And what we do is we go to the comp plan and we make those edits, and they are literally ignored. And then they come back with a new draft, and then we make more edits, and we say we have to, in order for us to have essential facilities, here's the language that we really need in the comp plan. And guess what happens? It's ignored again. And then we've been fighting this battle. We agreed that when the new county council members started that we would be very active because we were voicing this. And Vince and I actually went to one of the county council meetings and had this conversation. They said, do us a favor, really pay attention to that comp plan. And we have been. And that's where, it's amazing to me. Vince is also on an environmental group within the community and the county. And so he sees both sides of this thing. And I'll let you touch on it, Vince. But if we don't figure out a way to have our language actually materialize in this document and then go into the UDCs, then we are literally, and I don't want to blow this out of proportion, but we are going to have rolling blackouts. My prediction is the first cold weather event of, around probably the beginning of 2026. That's less than a year away if we don't get this right. And then we better hurry because, like you said, it's going to take a lot of time for us to build a renewable generation, and energy storage is a really big component of that we also need really consider. Vince, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I want to touch on something that Jeff brought up, and then connect this to the Yale survey that he mentioned earlier about the support for renewable energy on public lands and support for renewable energy in general. Part of the problem is if you look at the comp plan, like I say, you've got to be a very concerned person to read through all 474 pages of this stuff, and to sit back and try and absorb what all the implications of this are. It's really challenging. So I think you see the press releases that come out and say the comp plan is there, we want your inputs. And if you go to the Engage San Juan County website, and, if you navigate it, you can actually find the public comments that are coming in. By and large, they're from organized groups that have a specific stake in the game, and they're primarily that preserve the rural character type stuff. And so they're trying to make sure that it's restrictive as possible. And the problem is that because of these elements appear to be developed in silos, there's not really an overarching goal to this whole thing outside of meet the Growth Management Act minimum requirements on it. And so you ask the question, what happens after the comp plan? Does it go on the shelf, or is it actively looked at? And do the departments within county government take their guidance from this, or are just doing the projects they want to do, or the cherry picking? So basically, does the essential, most important things get done? And it's not clear to me right now that that's the case.
So, Vince, I think that you've helped distill this down to a very practical issue or choice, and that is whether renewables are considered essential public facilities. Is that right? It's kind of almost binary. It either makes it in there with that designation or it does not. And the implications either way are huge. One way is the San Juans will get renewable, more likely. It enhances the likelihood that the San Juans will have local, homegrown renewable energy when it's needed, when there are no other options. And the other way is it probably doesn't. It probably doesn't happen. Am I oversimplifying? I'm trying to oversimplify. Help me oversimplify.
Let me make one comment. It's even if we get that essential public facility designation in the utility element, be careful of the other elements that undermine that. I know that the land use, if all of a sudden what we've seen is that they try to counter the essential nature of what we provide by undermining some of the land use elements that create enough of a conflict that you could challenge the project based on the comp plan. Does that make sense? They're really broadening their discouragement of renewable energies, and it touches all the elements, and it's such a comprehensive document that you could always find another element to undermine it, even though it may be in the utility side.
Well, we've been going about a half hour, and I think we've given people a lot to think about. And I think that we have, I think you have made the case that this is fairly urgent. This is probably a lot more urgent than people understand right now. The way I think of it is, I'm thinking of you, Foster, as my car repairman. And you're telling me, I brought the car in, and you're telling me this is going to fail. This car is going to fail, and it's going to fail in a very major way in about 6 months or a year and a half if you don't fix something. And so I hear you when you talk about rolling blackouts. I hear you diagnosing for the community as the man in the center of all of this with the best view of anybody, that rolling blackouts, which is the ultimate failure, the power goes out, everything is black, pumps don't work, nothing works. I hear you saying this is in our near-term foreseeable future. If some corrections, some repairs, if I may, aren't made, and the time is now. So
And the time,
are we comfortable?
and the time is now, and what we need. They're going to start in a cold weather event when we need it the most, right? We're going to experience a cold January, February event. And then lo and behold, if we don't have power coming from the mainland, we don't have the ability to provide reliable energy. That is a scary thought. And guess what? It's going to get worse and worse and worse over time. Maybe it starts with something that's, a blackout during that weather event, but it's going to get worse as we go. So you're absolutely right, Jeff.
Well, we've all lived through a power outage last year or so. It seems like it was coming on Christmas. One was it 2 years in a row or 1 year in a row? We had a outage. I think where we were. I think was it 3 days, 2.5 days. It was a long time. And sometimes it's a weather event. Sometimes it's a cable event. But the kind of rolling blackouts that you're talking about would be kind of self-inflicted, right? I mean, we see in 2025 the need, and we didn't do it. We didn't do it. And I guess values could change at that point in time, but you're saying this is the time to proactively step in the way and break that cycle so that you can continue to provide power, local, homegrown, renewable power, as the climate changes, the demand goes up. So a lot to think about. Good luck with county government. Good luck with this process. Thank you for being the voice over and over again. It's very hard to change values. It's very hard to get attention, but I think you've raised some almost existential questions, some existential threats to the way of life in the San Juans in the next 5-10 years. And the time to act is now. So thank you, gentlemen. I hope you have a great day, a great weekend, and hopefully we'll have more of these conversations in the near future. I'm Jeff Nodell with SanJuans.Today, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.